roads, man, it's better to have a big block Mopar with the 5-speed. Wow.
From a troubled kid in California to the king of custom bikes, Jesse James built an empire that everyone admired, until one scandal shattered it all. 11 days after his wife stood on the Oscar stage, the world discovered secrets he tried to hide, and suddenly the man everyone cheered for became the man everyone questioned. Raised between engines and shadows, Jesse James entered the world on April 19, 1969, in Linwood, California, and almost from the beginning, his life carried a quiet tension that never truly left him. While he was still in elementary school, his parents, Carol and Larry, went their separate ways, and Jesse, along with his sister Juliana, moved to Riverside with their father. From that moment on, the feeling of a stable home slipped away. His mother was gone, and his father spent most of his time working long hours, running an antiques business inside a shared warehouse crowded with Harley parts and motorcycle builders. During the day, Jesse drifted through rows of chrome and engines, climbing over bikes that seemed almost alive in his eyes. But when night came, everything changed. As the years passed, Jesse would speak about the violence he faced at home, describing how he would run into the darkness trying to escape, until one night he tripped over a fence wire and broke his wrist. His father laughed before eventually taking him to get it treated, and Jesse grew used to covering up bruises with stories about dirt bike crashes. His sister stood by those stories, even though their father denied everything and insisted Jesse had always been his favorite. Fear settled into the house, making childhood feel anything but safe or normal, and Jesse learned to shift his focus onto something that wouldn't hurt him back: the machines around him. The warehouse became his refuge, the one place where his mind stayed active and free. His earliest memories were tied to engines and scattered metal parts, crawling over motorcycles and studying every detail. By the time he was 7, he was already taking things apart, teaching himself how engines worked without anyone showing him. Whenever his father was gone, Jesse would quietly pull tools from drawers and disappear into silent corners, breaking machines down piece by piece and carefully putting them back together. The smell of oil soaked into his clothes, and the roar of engines felt like a kind of freedom he couldn't find anywhere else. Some nights, he would start a bike just to hear it come alive, then shut it down quickly, pausing to listen for police sirens far off in the distance. Those early years slowly pushed him toward a path that even he knew was dangerous. With no one watching over him, Jesse began stealing cars as a teenager, not for excitement, but out of a deep curiosity to understand how they worked. He learned to hotwire engines in seconds, driving the cars home before taking them apart in the driveway or garage. Neighbors would notice stripped-down frames sitting under tarps, wheels missing, engines scattered across the ground. Eventually, the police caught up with him. One car half dismantled in the garage, another parked outside, and the arrest followed him like a shadow. Years later, he admitted that one of the cars he stole had belonged to Olympic skater Scott Hamilton, a confession he made face-to-face in an awkward moment he couldn't avoid. Around that same time, Jesse still held on to the belief that football might offer him a way out. At Riverside City College, he played outside linebacker, building a reputation for hard hits and relentless effort. Scouts began to notice, and for a while, it felt like a real opportunity was forming. But everything changed in a single moment. During a game, his knee bent the wrong way, tearing ligaments and cartilage in a devastating injury. He fought through recovery and tried to come back, but another injury soon followed, finishing what the first had started. With arrests in his record and injuries piling up, the calls from coaches stopped, and the future he once imagined on the field slowly disappeared. With that door closed, Jesse turned toward the work that matched the life he had already been living. At 19, he started working as a bouncer in rough bars, throwing out troublemakers and learning how to stand his ground in unpredictable situations. Before long, he moved into bodyguard work, traveling with bands like Slayer, Glenn Danzig, and Soundgarden. Nights were loud and chaotic, filled with crowds pushing toward the stage and fights breaking out without warning. Over time, he became head of security on tours, staying alert while everything around him spiraled into noise and disorder. The road shaped him into the hardened figure people would later recognize, covered in tattoos and carrying a quiet, controlled intensity. And somewhere in the middle of all that movement and chaos, the idea of building motorcycles kept growing stronger, waiting for its moment. That moment finally came in 1992, when Jesse began building bikes in his mother's garage in Long Beach. He had almost no money and barely enough tools to get started, so he scavenged parts from junkyards and welded frames together under a single dim light. Some nights, he slept on the cold concrete floor, waking up with metal dust clinging to his clothes. Slowly, local riders began hearing about his work, and they started showing up with deposits and ideas for custom frames that no factory would ever make. The work piled up faster than he could handle, and mistakes nearly dragged him under when he built parts for other shops just to survive. Still, he refused to stop, because that small garage was the first place that truly felt like his own. Forging a name through fire and steel. During those years, Jesse kept searching for someone who could push his skills further, and that path led him to legendary builder Boyd Cotting. He forced his way into Boyd's shop and took on long, exhausting hours, polishing metal and learning the discipline of precision fabrication. The environment was hard and demanding, but it sharpened his abilities and gave him a clear view of what true craftsmanship meant. In time, creative differences grew between them, and Jesse chose to walk away, carrying everything he had learned back to Long Beach. Those lessons mixed with his rough instincts and shaped the identity that would later define West Coast choppers. His motorcycles never followed trends. While others focused on polished chrome and bright finishes, Jesse stripped his bikes down to their core, leaving them raw and aggressive. Hardtail frames delivered every shock directly to the rider. Steep rake angles made each ride feel unpredictable, and dark finishes replaced anything shiny. Riders looking for something real and dangerous found their way to him, and slowly, the shop's reputation spread far beyond Long Beach. He didn't produce many bikes each year because every frame passed through his own hands. Months went into a single build, and many were rejected before completion. Waiting lists grew, and his bikes became rare pieces collectors chased. Selling motorcycles alone wasn't enough, but the Skull logo and merchandise kept the business alive. Fame followed. Clients like Shaquille O'Neal and Kid Rock came in with bold requests, bringing more attention each time. Then in 2002, everything shifted when Monster Garage premiered on the Discovery Channel. The show captured Jesse and his crew transforming vehicles into extreme creations within 1 week. It was loud, chaotic, and real. Failures happened just as often as success, and that tension kept viewers coming back. Producers had first noticed him while filming at his shop. Drawn to his unfiltered attitude, he argued, broke tools, and never pretended when things failed. That honesty gave the show an edge, and millions tuned in every week. Before that, Motorcycle Mania had already introduced him to a national audience, showing his work inside the Long Beach shop, and even following him into Mexico on rough desert rides. The mix of danger and celebrity built a reputation that people either respected or questioned. In 2006, he hosted History of the Chopper, exploring custom bike culture while building his own tribute. But by then, he had grown tired of Monster Garage. After more than 100 builds, ideas felt repeated, and pressure from producers pushed concepts he didn't believe in. He chose to walk away rather than fake it, closing one chapter and stepping into another. At its peak, West Coast Choppers expanded across multiple buildings in Long Beach, employing dozens of workers. Only a few bikes came out each year, each priced high enough to become collector pieces. Merchandise spread worldwide, and fans gathered outside the shop. The city even renamed the street West Coast Choppers Place. But behind the USPEC, pressure built quietly. Long hours and strict deadlines wore people down, and Jesse's temper became part of daily life. By 2010, the shop suddenly closed, leaving silence behind as he moved to Texas to start over. His personal life mirrored that chaos. He married Janine Lindemolder in 2002, and their daughter Sunny was born 2 years later. But addiction and legal trouble broke the relationship apart. After Janine served prison time for tax charges, a long custody battle ended with Jesse gaining full custody and taking Sunny with him. Fame, fallout, and the cost of choices. In 2005, Jesse married Sandra Bullock, and instantly their relationship became the center of public attention. For a time, everything looked stable, even successful, especially when she stood on stage, winning an Academy Award and thanking Jesse in her speech. But not long after that moment, reports of his affairs began to surface, and by 2010, the marriage had fallen apart. Jesse admitted his mistakes publicly and entered treatment, while Sandra quietly moved forward with her life. At the same time, problems in his business were already building. In 2007, California regulators fined him more than $200,000 after inspections revealed that his motorcycles failed to meet emissions standards. Lawsuits from unhappy customers followed, including one involving a custom Cadillac that was never completed despite large payments. Legal costs and settlements stacked up, slowly damaging the reputation he had spent years creating. Then in March 2010, everything collapsed at once. Just days after Sandra held her Oscar, news broke that Jessie had been unfaithful. A tattoo model named Michelle McGee sold her story, claiming they had been involved for 11 months, starting in May 2009. She provided explicit messages as proof, and her public image only made the scandal more explosive. Jessie had been warned the story was coming, but he didn't deny it immediately. Soon, more women came forward, and the situation spiraled. Melissa Smith claimed a 2-year relationship, even sending an apology letter, while Brigitte Daguerre spoke about messages and meetings dating back to 2008. Within days, the scandal was everywhere. The timing made it worse. Only 11 days earlier, Sandra had celebrated her Best Actress win for The Blind Side. During that moment, she spoke about motherhood and strength, unaware that her own life was already breaking apart. Jessie had stood beside her for the cameras, but behind that image, everything was already unraveling. On March 18th, the story went public, and Sandra learned about it the same way the world did. Jessie released a statement that partly apologized but also denied some claims, which only intensified public anger. Media surrounded their Long Beach home, and the joy of the Oscar disappeared overnight. Sandra left for Texas, and by April 23rd, she filed for divorce. In the following year, Jessie spoke openly but often without full regret. He admitted to cheating, but made comments that drew more criticism. He explained that his treatment focused on anger rooted in childhood, not substance abuse. Over time, he admitted he had destroyed his own life, and even suggested part of him expected to be caught. What hurt him most, he said, was losing contact with Sandra's adopted son, Louis. After the divorce, he closed West Coast Choppers and moved to Austin, hoping to stay connected, but that connection never came. The adoption had once brought them together, but it disappeared just as quickly. Jessie later said losing that bond was the hardest part, a loss that stayed with him long after everything else was gone. Controversy and a fight to rebuild. The scandal tore through Jessie's business almost as fast as it ended his marriage. Within days, major retailers removed West Coast Choppers merchandise from their shelves, and the clothing line that once carried most of the company's income vanished overnight. The Iron Cross logo, once a symbol of rebellion, suddenly felt different to the public, and customers turned away. At the same time, fake versions of the brand flooded the market, making the losses even worse. By October 2010, the Long Beach shop shut down completely, and Jessie relocated to Texas, later admitting that motorcycles themselves rarely brought profit. The merchandise had been holding everything together. Years of work, from the early garage days to television fame, seemed to disappear, and employees were left to find their own way. Fans who once supported the brand turned against it, while lawsuits and fines continued to build. Then another wave of backlash hit. Reports surfaced linking Jessie to Nazi imagery, including claims about a surfboard in his office painted with Adolf Hitler giving a salute. Michelle McGee said he had shown it to her, and soon old photos appeared of Jessie wearing a Nazi hat and raising his arm at parties. Stories spread about offensive remarks outside his shop, and critics pointed to the Iron Cross symbol, saying it resembled Nazi imagery too closely. Jessie dismissed it as jokes, but public opinion had already shifted. Business partners cut ties quickly, and even rumors began suggesting Sandra might have known, though most believed he had kept that hidden until everything came out. Motorcycle events across the country stopped inviting him. Shows and rallies that once welcomed him now feared protests and negative attention. Building bikes had always been at the center of his life, and losing that connection left him isolated. The crowds disappeared, along with the energy that once surrounded his work. Without appearances and major commissions, his business shrank to smaller projects, and the man once seen as a leader in custom bikes was now struggling to hold on. Television didn't bring him back either. A new show based on his work in Austin was meant to restart his career, but it failed quickly as viewers lost interest. Critics said it lacked the raw energy of his earlier work, and low ratings ended it before it could grow. Jessie responded with frustration, blaming the network, but by then the damage was already done. The public no longer saw a comeback story, only a decline. Financial pressure followed closely behind. Divorce costs reached into the millions, and custody battles over his daughter Sunny continued for years. Lawsuits from customers and government fines added more weight, and without merchandise income, he struggled to stay afloat. The life he had built in California faded piece by piece, leaving him in Texas, working alone and trying to rebuild from nothing. Not long after, he purchased a large property outside Austin. It sat on 8 acres, with 9 bedrooms, a pool, a theater room, and space for 6 cars. The location was close to Sandra's home, and Jesse said he wanted Sunny near her, believing she was a positive influence. His former wife, Janine Lindemulder, challenged the move in court, and headlines quickly turned the situation into controversy. Reporters questioned his intentions, while Sandra remained silent. Jesse insisted it was about stability, but the attention kept his name in the news. Around that same period, he began working with Austin Speed Shop, a respected custom shop known for high-end builds. His presence brought immediate attention, and wealthy clients arrived expecting something extraordinary. One customer even paid more than $150,000 up front for a custom hot rod. Jesse threw himself into the work, demanding perfection in every detail. But perfection came at a cost. Weeks turned into months, and months into a year. Designs were scrapped and rebuilt, parts rejected over minor flaws, and tensions grew inside the shop. Workers quietly spoke about wasted money as expensive chrome parts piled up, never even making it onto a finished car. Chaos in the shop and a sudden exit. The client kept waiting, but real updates never came, and eventually that patience turned into threats of lawsuits. Some of the older mechanics quietly said it felt just like the old West Coast choppers days, when builds dragged on and customers were left hanging. The tension spilled into the TV show as well. When cameras arrived to film Outlaw Garage, the constant delays caused episodes to fall apart. One project was completely abandoned after Jesse walked away from a paint job he believed looked wrong. Confidence from clients slowly faded, deals began disappearing, and the shop started losing serious money. What began as excitement around his name turned into pressure for everyone involved, with mechanics often left fixing issues long after Jesse had moved on. The problems ran deeper because Jesse never fully fit into the structure of Austin Speed Shop. The founders had built everything on teamwork, schedules, and careful planning. Jesse came in with a different mindset. He wanted full control and resisted being told how things should be done. Equipment was moved without warning, and the best welders were pulled into his own builds while other projects slowed down. Arguments became part of daily life, especially when cameras were around. Producers wanted structure for the show, but Jesse refused to follow scripts or tone down his personality. One day, everything boiled over. Managers rejected his plan to push a customer's truck beyond its limits, and Jesse slammed a toolbox in frustration, accusing them of killing his creativity. Mechanics watched from a distance and quietly picked sides. Some longtime workers stopped taking extra shifts, worn out by late-night demands that constantly changed. Even during breaks, tension filled the air, with arguments over missed deadlines and rising costs. Jesse began isolating himself, working alone with loud music while the rest of the crew kept their distance. The same rebellious nature that once made him famous was now pushing people away in a place that depended on teamwork. The conflict stretched on for more than a year, slowly wearing everyone down. It began after the Outlaw Garage pilot, when his first major project fell months behind schedule. Meetings were arranged to deal with the delays, but he often skipped them. Through the summer, disagreements continued, Jesse trusting his instincts while managers insisted on sticking to plans. Emails became short and tense. Some workers even started hiding tools, worried about sudden outbursts when projects went wrong. Instead of slowing down during the holidays, Jesse pushed for longer hours, yet sometimes disappeared on personal trips, leaving unfinished builds behind. By early 2013, the distance between him and the rest of the shop was clear. On camera, everything looked calm, but off camera, he often sat alone while rumors spread that his time there was ending. Eventually, the founders called him into a long private meeting. Voices rose as they argued over losses tied to his projects and the future of the shop. Jesse felt trapped by the rules, while the managers believed the business was slipping out of control. When the meeting ended, nothing was resolved. The excitement he once brought had faded into exhaustion. Deep down, Jesse struggled with the structure of the shop. He was used to building by instinct, working late into the night, and making decisions on the spot. Austin's speed shop required planning, approvals, and deadlines. To him, it felt restrictive, like the life had been taken out of the work. The more he resisted, the more isolated he became. Then in 2013, the break finally came. It happened suddenly, with little explanation. Jesse was gone, and his name disappeared from the shop almost overnight. There was no farewell and no joint statement. He later posted a short message saying he was focusing on personal projects and bringing his energy back to West Coast choppers. Behind the scenes, people talked about final arguments over money and unfinished builds, but the full story remained unclear. Fans were left confused and began to guess what really happened. Some blamed the failing show, while others pointed to Jesse's reputation for conflict. The shop moved forward without him, continuing its work as before. Jesse turned toward new projects, stepping into another chapter of his life, but his time at Austin's speed shop left a mark that followed him long after he walked away. A quiet rebuild in steel. After Austin's speed shop faded away, Jesse didn't leave the world of metal behind. Instead, he moved in a new direction. Around 2012, he quietly started Jesse James Firearms Unlimited in Austin, shifting from motorcycles to custom firearms. He began crafting pistols and rifles with the same precision he once used on choppers, finishing each piece by hand with detailed engraving and personal touches. The shop was simple and bayed from attention, set inside a quiet warehouse where Jesse worked alone, building and testing each piece himself. For longtime followers, the feeling remained familiar. The outlaw image was still there, but now it lived inside a legal business focused on craftsmanship instead of television. By 2020, the company held a federal firearms license and produced limited runs that sold for thousands of dollars. Jesse said this work felt closer to his roots, like being back in a garage, free from outside pressure. His personal life, however, remained unsettled. His relationships often followed the same pattern: strong beginnings that ended in public breakups. His marriage to Sandra Bullock remained the most talked about, but it was not the only one. In 2020, another divorce pulled him back into headlines, and the cycle continued. Reporters kept focusing on his personal life because the story seemed to repeat itself again and again. By 2026, Jesse spoke openly about his journey during the Team Never Quit podcast. He reflected on learning to weld as a teenager and how that led to West Coast choppers and television fame. He admitted that lawsuits, divorces, and constant public attention slowly wore him down. But despite everything, the rise, the fall, and the controversy, he made one thing clear: he never lost the Jelani to keep building. And that's the story: a life shaped by raw talent, tough choices, and consequences that never stayed hidden. From a garage full of broken parts to worldwide fame, Jesse James kept moving forward, no matter how many times things fell apart. In the end, through all the chaos and rebuilding, one thing never changed: he kept creating.